book?
You mean in the Old Testament?
No, in
Oh, it's Hebrews.
Hebrews 11. And guess who gets the main show, the main amount of words to praise? Abraham. He's first up. Now, let's take a look at Abraham and his service, because you may be surprised. You may, in fact, be surprised. I will say that no matter who we look at in both the Old or New Testament, these folks had flaws just like we have flaws. And it's important to look at this. Abraham, absolutely the lion of faith in Hebrews. And yet we're going to see some things that sort of like, you're going to say, well, that's kind of messy. And that's because life is messy. It was then, and I think we all would agree it is now. Okay, so let's look at it. The key point here is the obedient take God at his word. Again, we're looking at service through obedience. We're looking at obedience. Even when these people, us as well, don't fully understand the word, they rest assured that they will receive God's promises whenever God decides to fulfill them. And you know that in Abraham's life, it wasn't right away that his promises were kept. It was way down the road. So let's look at that. We're in the same shape. We ourselves are looking at God to fulfill his promises to us, but we really don't know when that's going to happen. But we have to be faithful in our belief that God will fulfill his promises to us as a group and to us individually. So that's the key point. Background, God promised Abraham a son 6 times. And I have listed the scriptures there for each of those times. And that was over a 20-year period, a 2-decade period. Abraham received that son after 20 years. Abraham's faith in God certainly is unquestionable due to his willingness not only to obey God and kill his son, but to uproot his whole family and move them out of both the place and the home of his father. And so in Hebrews, we see Abraham, because of this unwavering faith, receives top billing in Hebrews 11. So 11 verses were dedicated to him in Hebrews. So let's kind of take a look at this, of what it meant for Abraham in the times he lived to be able to be fully obedient to God, and yet in certain instances messy. It was a messy time. Abraham, in some cases, his responses were kind of messy. Let's look at demonstrations of obedience or lack thereof. Well, certainly the example of Abraham that all of us would probably recall immediately was found in Hebrews 11:19. Abraham was ready to do what God asked because he knew, he had faith in God, that even if God asked him to kill Isaac, God had the ability to raise Isaac. He had that faith, and Isaac was on the altar. He was ready to do it, and God stayed his hand. I'm not sure in my life I would have had that faith. It would have been very, very difficult for me. So it's one of the reasons that Abraham is indeed lionized as a man of faith. He was ready to do that. Abraham also, and this is where it gets kind of messy, Abraham also knew that there was right and wrong, and he knew the difference between right and wrong. And he knew how God felt about lying. And yet, we see that Abraham did at one point and more, 2 points, lied. He absolutely lied. He lied about his wife being his sister on 2 different occasions to spare his own life and to hopefully retain his beautiful wife. Wow, kind of messy, wouldn't you say? For a man that had faith in God, I'm not sure that came from God, but the bottom line is that's messy. We live in messy lives. So I think that's really important for us to pay some attention to, and the scriptures are there for you to go back and look at. My point here is not to tear down Abraham. My point is to point out that even as we try to live a life of obedience to God in this world, it's going to be messy. It will definitely be messy. Messy as far as the world we live in, and messy sometimes because of us. We're not always going to make the right choice. It's a little bit like Moses choosing the second time to strike the rock instead of speaking to it. Well, it was kind of messy. And because of that, Moses didn't get to move into the promised land, but his descendants did. So is this making sense? Is this a topic that even resonates with you a little bit? It does to me because my life is messy. Thank goodness for Mary. We see that. It's interesting. So what are the results of obedience and disobedience that we see in Abraham's life and later on our own? So let's look at that. Certainly, obedient believers are sure to inherit a blessing. We have that as a promise from God, and God fulfills his promises. After a lifetime obediently following God's call to wander, I often wonder, I have huge wanderlust. And so I often wonder what I would have done if God called on me to wander. I think it would have been like Brer Rabbit in the thicket. It's sort of like, oh no, don't make me wander. It would be great. But in Abraham's time, that was a tall order because people stayed together in clans in specific areas. They had to comfort multiple generations and things like that. And so God's call to Abraham, that was difficult, but he still followed that. And Abraham did indeed become the father of a great nation, and those descendants did indeed receive a land of their own, just as God promised. He did receive a son, just as God promised. Again, in God's own time. I think it's interesting to note here, this is just my own thinking, but that while Abraham may have received considerable joy from the son that he had been promised, he did not receive one in land ownership. It's sort of like that, in fact, was a scenario that his descendants, in fact, received the land and not him. So, still, that's a fulfillment of God's promises to him. The second thing is the sixth promise, and that is back in Genesis 18:10, had a little bit of a hint, hearkening back to the Messiah. And Abraham, then, that he would become, it would be Abraham's lineage that the Messiah would come from. I don't know about you guys, but that would be quite a promise if you were told that, even in a kind of a prophesied way. It's sort of like, yeah, the Messiah will come from your lineage. That's impressive. But again, he did not live to see or have any conception of this ultimate result of his faithfulness. Now, this is a theme that I want you to think about, is that your faithfulness, our faithfulness may well be the blessing that our descendants receive. Isn't that amazing? Our faithfulness not only keeps us safe, not only blesses our life, but may be accorded to our descendants for our sake, in a way that you'd never imagine. Isn't that something? Because that's exactly what happened to Abraham. Uh, so is this surprising to you? Are these things sort of, they were to me, sort of like, I've really never thought of it that way. That's truly amazing. So, the ultimate result of our faithfulness may be blessings that we could never imagine to people that we never realized would be blessed by it. Yet another reason to have our lives focused on God and obedience to Him. So let's look at this. And again, it gets messy. Disagreements are usually more difficult when they occur between family members. And why is that? Have you ever had disagreements with family members? What are some of the characteristics of that?
We say things to them that we wouldn't say to just friends.
Yes, that's true. That's very good. That's excellent. Uh, to say that I had disagreements with my own family that I came from would be very euphemistic. Yes, I did. So why is it, besides saying things that you normally wouldn't say to a friend, why is it that they tend to be so hurtful besides language?
Because we truly love our family and friends who become family
That's right.
more
Exactly.
than the next person down the street.
It's a circle of trust. And when you have friends that are like family or family, they're in that circle of trust. And when you are betrayed from within your circle of trust, it hurts. There's several reasons why it hurts. One, are you usually surprised? I think most of us are surprised when we get betrayed from within that circle. So it's easier to get hurt. your defenses and everything. Yeah, no, didn't see it. It's essentially friendly fire. And it's sort of like never saw that coming. Wish it hadn't, and it hurts. So, do you remember the story of Abraham and Lot? God asked him to go somewhere and take his family with him. Abraham brought his nephew along. He endured family disagreements because of him. He placed himself in the uneasy position of bargaining with God over his nephew's fate. He fought a war for his nephew's sake. And the nation of the Moabites, who were forever a thorn in the Israelites' side, was spawned by the illicit union of Lot and his oldest daughter, who had been raised in the wicked society of Sodom. You see this in Genesis chapters 13, 14, 18, and 19. Is that messy? Isn't that kind of nasty? What if you were having to explain in our own families, hey, yeah, I know that happened. I'm really sorry. I don't know what to do about it. Wish it hadn't happened that way. All of that. But in spite of all of this nitty gritty, Abraham's decision to bring Lot with him was a seemingly harmless act. Or was it actually a circumvention of God's command, which could not help but cause trouble? Very, very messy. Our lives today, in spite of our obedience, in spite of our best efforts to not have that nitty gritty come into play. It does. And we all have it. And the key here is for us to recognize it and to decide that we're going to be obedient anyway, that that's the best path in our relationship with God. So what do you think in our own lives? God doesn't speak directly to us today. What do you see? Does this resonate with you? Does this resonate as something to really think about together? Are we struggling together on some things that, how do we reconcile our desire for obedience with something else that has happened or we've done or et cetera, et cetera? It's important because these are places where Satan sees daylight. He's sort of like, yeah, this is a great place. This is a chink in the armor, and I'm going to exploit it for everything it's worth. And that's something that we have to recognize that some of the things like this that arise are part of spiritual warfare that's going on around us. And we may be shocked by something that happens. Sort of like, what in the world? But I can tell you that that is likely spiritual warfare going on all around us. And it surprised us, but it didn't surprise the combatants. My hope always is, boy, I hope Michael's in there. I love Michael. It's sort of like there's very few people that could withstand, and very few dark spirits that could withstand the angel Michael. He pretty much was what I would call a closer. When Michael was done, the issue was closed. So let's explore that. Maybe discuss it a little bit about in our own lives. Would you leave your country as happened with Abraham and leave your parents' household, but go ahead and obey God and that kind of thing, and you're led to it? Can you think of any instances today where you see that happening? Let's say just in the church. Do you see that happening? I do. And you'll be surprised, but that's exactly what a missionary does. Leaving everything. And on the hope that that person and his family, or her family, would be supported. That's an act of faith that they're not going to work on. So we do have some examples of that. In what areas do you have difficult being obedient yourselves? I can easily tell you where mine are. You probably could too. No doubt about it. But there are places that each of us will have difficulty in being completely obedient to God. I can tell you for me, being less rebellious to things that are going on that you know are not right, less rebellious in wanting to eradicate that. The other one is that I work on all the time. Hopefully you've never seen it, but controlling my temper, without a doubt. And so I've worked on that very, very hard. I don't have fear genes, but I got a double dose of anger genes. And so I do my very best to control it. So how about you guys? Where do you struggle in all this?
Definitely in the anger category, especially at work when you've got someone on the phone, and they just let loose with a tirade, and good so-and-so,
Yeah.
this and that and this and that, and you have to remain calm, you have to remain professional, but you've got to build it up inside you. And sometimes it takes everything I've got not to raise my voice, not to, you have to swallow a lot there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so glad we have the example of Abraham, because again, he's held up as a classic example of a faithful life and a faithful man. And yet, yeah, all kinds of nitty gritty to deal with in his own. But I tell you, where the basis for most of my struggles with obedience is unfairness. When you're treated unfairly, you tend to, we all have this sort of, goes all the way back to Anglo-Saxons. I've been treated unfairly. That's not right. I demand my rights, et cetera, et cetera. We are off-put by unfair treatment, especially when you're getting possibly blamed for something you didn't do or unfairly attacked in your case on that. And so our immediate knee jerk is that, wait a minute, that's not fair. Is there another place in our life that we depend on being treated unfairly? I humbly submit that we depend on that place. It's grace and mercy.
Well, we have expectations, even though
Yes.
we're not supposed to.
Right.
I learned a long time ago that it's unfair, really, to put those expectations on other people because they don't know, basically, you have these. So we are treated unfairly at times because of that.
I think the paradox is that on one hand, we're offended by being treated unfairly by people in the world, our brothers and sisters, our own family, whatever. And the paradox is that yet we're praying to God that He will in fact treat us unfairly. We're not getting what we deserve. We're getting better than we deserve. And I think that is such a powerful message. So if we're dependent on one hand for being treated unfairly, can we object on the negative side when we're treated unfairly? I think it is a paradox in human nature that we can somehow believe we can do both. We want special treatment that's positive on the other hand, and we reject being, treated unfairly on the other. I think we need to have a different view of unfairness and realize that life is unfair, and part of it is unpleasant for us to be treated unfairly, but life after life is unfair in a very, very positive way. And so we need to be able to take both without being offended. So, anybody else, where do you struggle? Yes.
So just to sum up, sharing my understanding patiently is a big effort for me because, if people aren't ready to receive what I'm understanding, I become alarmed, and I want to work that out, and I have to be patient, and then comes to my mind, well, some punishing thoughts, if we can't work something out, something's going to happen. And, if I can't get this worked out, it's on you.
Yeah.
Whatever's going to happen is going to happen to this other person. So, in the beginning of the day, when I figure out what things I can get done and who I can work with and so on, noticed that some really, all those negatives come out because your brain's worked on your problems overnight. And so, I rely on, um, something that I learned or was told when I was very young. Um, Proverbs 16:3, commit your work to the Lord and your plans will be established. And so that, then I know that I remember Satan get behind me, and then I can make an effort to calm down a little bit and start working on things with more patience. We recently discussed Exodus 14:14, the verse we didn't, and the whole ideas in the process of Exodus. This is where the Egyptians were following the people out of Egypt, and God said, go ahead and move forward. Be still,
Know that I,
and I will fight for you.
yes.
And so that's what I have to try to come to, and that's the effort that can trip me up.
Absolutely. It's a very important point as far as making sure our plans are aligned with God's will for us and for others. I spent a lot of time in a very Jewish culture at Cornell University, very Jewish. Most people don't know that, but it's a very Jewish culture. And one of the things that many of them were Orthodox Jews, so that's a whole other ballgame. But the bottom line was they had funny sayings. They had a sense of humor in their relationship with God. And one of my favorites came from the department chair that I worked under. And he says, I plan and God laughs. And it's a great thing, and it's a very Jewish thing that they make plans, and yet the rest of the story is not available to them in that culture. That no, our relationship with God has to be us going to God and seeking His counsel before we make those plans. And as far as they're concerned, they don't see it. They just think the irony that God's in there messing them up. And their whole history kind of shows that God has messed with them a little bit, and probably rightfully so. But that phrase comes to mind all the time. In different venues, someone will say, well, you don't have a plan. And then it comes to mind, yeah, I plan and God laughs. I'm not sure I need a plan. I need God's plan. But that's the bottom line. We all struggle. We are imperfect people that are living in literally today an upside down world. It's difficult to get ourselves even oriented as to what to do next. So, when we look at what are the clues that the Bible gives us to why Abraham was able to follow such challenging directions, go, leave, wander, kill your son. What are the traits that allowed him to do that? How was he able to manage to do that?
He truly trusted.
Faith and trust in God. And even if we don't understand God's word completely, and even though we might understand God's word completely, we may not be able to apply it perfectly. Should we give up our faith in God, or should we hope that God will help us to to understand His Word better and help us to apply what we have learned to, in fact, our lives. That's the lesson I hope to deliver on serving in a nitty-gritty life in this obedience is we don't have to be perfect. And it's a fool's errand. If we were perfect, if we were able to achieve perfection, Christ would not have been needed. We would still be under the old law and we would be knocking it out of the park. Perfect. We are perfect. But we're not. Absolutely not. And so thank God for Jesus and thank God for the ability to, in spite of not having perfect knowledge, not perfect wisdom, but we are able to have faith in God that He'll get us there.
I don't think perfection is ever completely attainable. But in the world we live in now, trying to live right day to day is kind of like trying to drive the speed limit on I-25. You're either going to get honked at, yelled at, flipped off, or run over. No matter how hard you try to do it right, they're going to be swarming all down you.
It's, for me, it's a little bit like trying to throw a punch standing on ball bearings. Just as soon as I wind up, I'm on my back. It's just not going to work. So this, for me, is absolutely a drink of cold, wonderful water here. In looking at this example, in looking at the traits of Abraham, both positive, negative, it helps me. It's why I love Peter. If there ever were the imperfect apostle, it was Peter. I mean, racing in the wrong direction. People have to point at Peter. It's over there. We're going over there. I love Peter. He gives me hope, for sure. So what benefits might your children or your grandchildren or just your relatives enjoy due to your obedience? I think that's a real good question to ask out of this because we don't often think about the benefits that came to Abraham. Many of them went to his descendants and not to Abraham himself. Wow. What do we do about that? It's sort of like that's a whole new overlay that many of us don't think about. Especially benefits you probably won't live to see. That's hope. That's our hope in God as well. We hope for things in God. Hopefully we can build in ourselves an unshakable hope in God. But does any of this make sense, guys?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I've been struggling a lot lately.
Well, Missy, I think all of us do. Just some of us don't manage to talk about it because there's
Don't
no.
go and get blue hair.
Well,
But the one thing that I've learned that has helped me, because I can't control everything, and I love to control everything, and God laughs at me when I really, really think that's the way you need to go. Let me shut that. No. And is to say, Lord, bend me. And it's scary to say that. And I did it this week, and man, I was so busy at work. There was some crazy things, but it gave me hope that it's going to be okay. And God is in control, and everything's going to be okay. And if my great-great-grandkids get blessed because I hung on, amen.
Amen. That's right.
You know,
What could be better?
That could be,
What could be
and I
better?
pray for my children every day. And if they don't get blessed, maybe their kids will get blessed.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Throughout time, God has chosen unexpected and improbable people to to, in fact, not only do his will, but to lead his people. And so we need to remember that and remember that God still is in control. And, if we didn't know God was perfect, in some of his choices, they wouldn't be the ones that you would have chosen for the task. You just wouldn't. I think of Jephthah, but I also think of Nehemiah and his wall. There were goldsmiths' daughters building that wall. It's sort of like, what contractor do you know that when he was assigned to build a big project like that wall would say, okay, now the first thing we need to really think about is find some of the goldsmiths' daughters. We need to get them on here. It's sort of like, no, nobody would have thought of that. And yet that's exactly some of the people, 5 people, that were chosen. And so I think we need to remember that. And how can I put it? Make room in our lives and our patience when we see improbable people doing things that are God's will. Even if they're doing it in a way we wouldn't have thought was the right way, we may have to realize that, God often modifies our plans. So that's great. Any other comments on this? Do you think this would be a valuable series to look at as far as serving in the nitty-gritty of life? Is this worth pursuing? Okay, great. I don't want to lead a class that at the door I'm greeting you and asking you to give me your belts, your suspenders, and your shoestrings.
Can I say one thing?
Yes, of course.
I never thought about that, about what benefits my children and grandchildren might enjoy because of obedience to God. But I think they see your example and they see your service to God.
And faithfulness.
And as they grow older.
Yeah.
And that my prayer, like I pray every day, my sons and grandchildren, but that would be awesome if they could remember back, there was that time I saw, and remember something that you did. So I think that's really important.
Awesome. Okay, let's get ready to, sorry, Darren.
To build on what Mary was saying, one of the things that benefits them is to have that blueprint or
Yes.
building blocks or whatever. You set the tone. Even if you might mess up every day, you correct yourself. You set the tone. You give them something to model themselves after. Because there are so many kids now, they don't have that. They see how their parents do it. Their parents, and I hate to say it, they look for every shortcut. They look for every way to cheat the system. Every loophole that they can possibly find.
Shortcuts.
That is not the positive blueprint for them to grow up properly.
Right.
But you do it the right way. They watch you do it the right way. Then they can follow in those footsteps.
Absolutely.
And we all fall off the path. But if they follow the blueprint,
yeah,
they can get back on the right path.
That's right. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Anybody else before we break for worship? Get ready for worship. I will tell you that today will be a little different in worship. I hope to present a short sermon, but as my wife will tell you, in my vernacular, there is no such thing. Some shorter than others, but never short. We'll see. I intend to make it quick. And let's put it this way. And she would say, please use less words. And I'll try to do that. After services today, immediately after, we'll have a congregational meeting and we'll discuss some current events that we need to address ourselves. So thank you for your patience.